Welcome back to the Red Wings Report with Addy. This is Jeremy Laura. Really exciting news today from the Detroit organization as Sergei Fedorov's number 91 is finally going to be retired. Just a quick note on the last video on Hamonic. Just to be absolutely clear, this was not a signing I thought was in lieu of a top 4 defensive signing, i.e. passing on someone else to sign him. This is what I feel is an unnecessary signing because they have multiple players that can play the role that he does. Again, they may just be stocking up Grand Rapids, or hope of hopes, they're going to move someone out. If they moved on from Hall, this is, essentially could be a 1-for-1 replacement. But again, they've overstocked on depth players this summer, and they've missed out on multiple deals, and we'll discuss that later, but that was just a clarification on the last video. I appreciate the comments. Even if we disagree, please engage. I am going to contemplate everything you say, and I am going to respond as much as possible. And down the line, I'd like to do some interview shows with fans instead of just people in the industry. So if you have any interest of coming on, whether it's debate or just talk about a point, please look at my bio on YouTube, send me an email, and it would just be over a Zoom call. We'll set that up. But today, a near 30-year set of hard feelings has been put to rest as Sergei Fedorov's jersey is finally being retired. And of course, simple math. Wait a minute, he hasn't been retired for 30 years. This first, obviously, Hall of Famer. He was put into the Hall of Fame in 2015. In his draft class, he was selected he was selected in the 4th round by Detroit. And if you look at the end of the 3rd round for that draft, and I'll put the link in the bio, Chris Draper was selected by Winnipeg at the end of the 3rd round. So Draper was picked before Fedorov. Just kind of interesting. But Fedorov, first the hard feelings. While I was still writing for the other blog up until just a couple years ago, whenever we'd ask the annual question about Fedorov's jersey retirement, there are still a lot of fans who have hard feelings in the way he left Detroit, but also his final contract in Detroit, which led to him sitting out a good chunk of the 97-98 season. And it also forever fractured the relationship of Illich and Karmanos. So going to Fedorov, the early 90s saw Fedorov drafted, saw Lidstrom brought in, drafted. So key pieces to Detroit's rebuild with Yzerman at the helm as captain came in the early 90s. What made Fedorov unique was the political climate where Russian players were still, first, a lot of the league didn't want them. There was a lot of vitriol spewed by commentators in the sports world about bringing Russian players over to the U.S. So for Sergei Fedorov, to draft him, it's a risk. You have to convince him to come over. There were a lot of promises made, and that will lead into the second part of this, but he was brought over, and if you remember, he had reporters with him on the day Fedorov defected from Russia to the U.S., comes to Detroit, and absolutely number 91, without him, I don't think there's 3 of the Stanley Cups. He was such an integral part of killing the 42-year drought in 97, coming back in 98, the win it for Vladdy, and then, of course, the star-studded 2001 team where you had, Brett Hull and Luc Robitaille in depth roles for the organization. Chris Chelios has come over. But after that first Stanley Cup win, Fedorov was recognized as a crossover personality for hockey. NHL still struggles to break into mainstream to the same degree as the NFL and the NBA, where people just recognize a player. Ovechkin's done that. Crosby's done that. McDavid, you can argue, has done that. Matthews, for certain. There are a lot of non-hockey people that know those names. Sergei Fedorov, he was doing Nike commercials. He's dating very famous tennis players that we can't talk about. And he was part of the pop culture lexicon. So Carolina puts together a deal that is so front-loaded on payments and bonuses based on success he would surely have in Detroit, but not necessarily in Carolina. So there was a holdout. The offer was investigated. Eventually, Ilitch had to go ahead and just pay the money. And Fedorov, he responds in coming back and having the first 5-goal game in Red Wings history, where he scores all the goals in regulation and then scores the overtime winner, for his 5th. Incredible performance, and just someone who, he's wearing different colored skates with the Nike logo. He had an action figure that was a little tall for an action figure, just about Barbie height, and they took that around the locker room, and the guys teased him about it. But you couldn't deny the impact he had on the culture and on Detroit. So after that contract, the Karmanos side of it, there had been a team called the Junior Red Wings. That title was taken away. Karmanos and Ilitch, who had once been kind of lockstep, at least business-wise, that rift, it was really never repaired. So when that contract is up and Fedorov goes to Anaheim, fans who had still had a bad taste in their mouth over that negotiation, him saying basically, and I think this is a stretch, but people think of him saying, "I'll go anywhere but Detroit." And he wasn't in the best frame of mind at the time, but he leaves and people are angry. And they're angry starting with that 1998 contract. So 27 years of people being angry in 2025 about a deal that, in the end, it gave a big pay rise to a lot of stars, which unfortunately was kind of undone by the lockout and shutting down hockey, and then the salary cap, where there was a long time people weren't getting back to a 6-year, $38 million deal, and certainly not the inflation equivalent, and that kind of front-loaded cash where someone can walk home with $12 million in a single payday. Now you've got guys, getting paid more than that, like a Matthews or a McDavid, or even Tavares had some pretty solid take-homes on his bonuses. So Fedorov did a lot to change the league, not just as a player, but in the business of it as well. But the hard feelings from those negotiations have lasted way, way too long. And then his eventual departure in 2003. So we're finally getting number 91 in the rafters, where it's belonged for a long time. 91, in my mind, was as pivotal a player as 19. And as a two-way centerman, I think he was ahead of the curve of Yzerman in Yzerman's changing his game, just what Fedorov could do all over the ice. And if you remember, there are times they'd even put him on the blue line opposite Lidstrom. He could play anywhere and do anything. His Nike commercials were epic, and really an outstanding career that unfortunately had a soured ending in Detroit. So let me know your thoughts in the comments. Are you long past forgive and forget? This is way overdue. Or are there some of you that are still really unhappy with signing the offer sheet that put Ilitch in a place where he had to pay him, or his departure, the way he left? Are there still some of you that feel that was some some sort of betrayal and you're still angry about that. For me, this Hall of Fame player who we should be celebrating as one of the best parts of what Detroit experienced, in 4 decades. And what we look back on now is kind of the glory days where the organization wants to try to return to. You don't have so many of those great memories without Sergei Fedorov. I appreciate him as a player, as an icon, as a businessman in the sport, though business troubles followed him quite a bit with some pretty shady characters. But his impact on culture and on the sport of hockey, far beyond just the rink, and I think this is long overdue. I wish Mr. Ilitch were still here to have this celebration, because you want to see those fences mended. But in the end, I'm sure Marion will be so happy to see this finally get done. And congratulations to Steve Yzerman and the Red Wings organization for making the decision to walk away from a difficult past and celebrate 100 years of Detroit Red Wings with this long overdue number retirement for Sergei Fedorov.